Dear students, welcome to the course on human psychology and international relations. I welcome you also to the first unit of the course, which talks about human psychology, international relations, interdisciplinary approach to global affairs. So while we uncover the course, students, I want you to look at some of the outcomes that would be deliverables by the end of the course. So while you do this course, you'll be able to describe the interdisciplinary connections between psychology and international relations, recognizing how human behavior underpins political actions at the global level. You will also be able to analyze the role of psychological concepts such as perception, motivation, identity in shaping state behavior, understanding leadership decisions, how are they taken, how do they impact the global politics, and a lot of international interactions, their nature and their dynamics. You will further be able to evaluate selected international events or conflicts through a psychological lens. So, understanding the global politics from a psychological perspective, taking in the interdisciplinarity of both the perspectives, psychology and international relations, to the study of global politics. The course further is going to explore how human behavior influences international relations. So, students, while we do this course, what is very important for you to understand is that we are using a psychological lens to understand international relations. Because we talk about humans in the international relations, therefore, the study of human behavior, which is psychology, is absolutely a non negotiable in the context. Then, highlighting the importance of what goes inside the human, the psychology of it, emotions, perception, relating it to the concept of group identity. Further, also bridging psychological theories with diplomatic strategies and global cooperation. So, what are some theories of psychology that relate or help us understand the global idea of cooperation, conflict, how strategies are made, how diplomatically they are handled? So, understanding it through a psychological perspective. Before we go ahead and try and see how psychology and international relations are intertwined, let us first see what is interdisciplinarity and how is this essential. When we talk about interdisciplinarity, it is important for us to uncover that we are talking about how two disciplines are both a cause and effect to each other. How do they impact each other? So, when one discipline creates an impact over the other, there are shakings that further creates an impact over the previous discipline. So, how the intertwining happens, how they tend to be very strongly connected and yet separated in their own spaces. So, while we talk about interdisciplinarity, it is very essential because it helps complex human behavior shape political decisions. As I've already, explained, that when we are talking about politics, when we're talking about global politics, we're talking about the major stakeholders as humans. And when we see humans, what is a very non negotiable is the behavior that we look in. So, understanding of the complexity of behavior, how these behavioral aspects, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, biases, how they impact the political decisions. Then challenge the assumption of purely rational actors, help manage crises and conflicts with empathy. So, how do you use a psychological principle of relating to others, that is empathy, and try and take this construct to management of global affairs? Address public opinion and national identity, support cross culture diplomacy and global understanding. Further, we look at key areas of interdisciplinary collaboration. So, these are certain spaces where we are trying to explain how psychological concepts relate to the political idea. So, it's cognitive biases, the judgment biases that we create, the tilts in thinking process, how they impact your decision making, especially in spaces of uncertainty. How you become more prone to take a tilted decision or use a heuristic or an algorithm while doing decision making. Then concept of group identity, how alliances formation happens, how negotiation in the group takes place, how conflicts begin, and how they are also resolved. Then, role of emotional intelligence in diplomacy and negotiation, something very important. How do we use understanding and management of self emotions and management of others' emotions? How the entire construct of being able to resonate, step into the shoes of other people and see the space as they see it, yet have an objective view over the idea. Then, trauma and resilience, how post war recovery is to be seen, how keeping in mind the challenges of the post war implications, how the war should be avoided and peace building should be at the focus. Communication patterns, how media influences uh, the behavior, how media influences the decision making in today's time, having a very, very thoughtful communication space, at the same time, very planned communication patterns. Then, motivation, how motivation plays a role in conflict resolution and peace building. So, this is somewhere the conjuncture point where psychology and international relations, they both intersect each other, where they try and use constructs from each other. At the same time, they also exist in their independent domains. Further, we try and see what are certain interdisciplinary methods that are used. There are behavioral analysis of leaders that we take in. We try and see how leaders have taken certain decisions, what have they relied upon. Then, content analysis of speeches. Speeches formulate a very important part of any kind of a conflict or a peace building space. So, analyzing the speeches, trying to look into what are the biases or what are the spaces where negotiations are taken up. Surveys and pollings are used. Case studies of crisis are also used to understand where both the disciplines intersect. And of course, the cross cultural studies to bridge communication gaps. So, while researches happen in different spaces, researches happen in different cultural settings where both the constructs tend to merge at a point. So, these are certain ideas where interdisciplinary methods help us understand the intertwining of the two disciplines. Benefits of integrating psychology into IR. Of course, the most important is that the empathetic diplomacy and trust building happens. If leaders are more empathetic, if leaders are able to develop a kind of trust over other nations, it helps us to preserve our own self at the same time contribute effectively to the global affairs. Then it also helps to predict behavior during crisis. How do we manage crisis intervention? What are the basic aspects that we use in the political space to manage crisis? Trauma sensitive interventions, a more trauma informed care. How do we make sense of trauma, chronic pain, excessive pain, something that is grieving inside? How do we make sense of this in the political space? Public diplomacy to counter misinformation. How do we work on miscommunications, misinformations, and how do we manage the space of holistic and human centered policy making, encouraging a more human centered policy construction, keeping the human at the epicenter, trying to see what could be at the benefit for the major stakeholders. There's certain challenges and ethical considerations that draw in almost every discipline, and hence this is also no nothing away. So risk of manipulation through propaganda falls in, where there can be misinformation effects that get created or confirmation biases that get projected. Cultural differences must be respected. We need to understand that people in global space, they come from different cultural spaces, and everybody has a different response because they come from different rearing practices. Ethical use of psychological tools very strongly required, and need for interdisciplinary training. For anybody to progress in an interdisciplinary field, one needs to get oriented to the idea of what is interdisciplinarity, what is its benefits, and how can we make it more richer, how can we make it more dependable in our everyday work. So, just to conclude, integrating psychology into international relations enriches global understanding, helps manage conflicts, foster cooperation, and create human centered policies. It is extremely essential for addressing modern transnational challenges like climate change, globalization, migration, and terrorism. With this, I thank you all for being a part of this course. I hope that you delve deeper into the understanding and you're able to make much more clearer view of human psychology in international relations. Looking forward to see you ahead. Thank you.